Welcome back to Kevin Toll Reads. I hope you're doing well. As you can probably tell, I am all congested. I'm getting congested. It's that spring season allergy stuff. Yeah, and if you ever wonder why I wear a hat all the time, it's because, I need a haircut really bad. And I know my hair's not super long to begin with, but yeah. Little every time. Every time. We'll cut that out. So it's Saturday Shorts, and I have Quattro. I have 4 for you today. I wasn't planning on doing 4, but I came across something on my Kindle, and I was like, I got to read that, and I'm going to work that one in because, I need that short story in my life, and we will talk about that one last. But I had 3 lined up, really good ones. I'm going to kick it off with Marion Zimmer Bradley. I went back to this collection, The Best of Marion Zimmer Bradley, and I picked the story, The Secret of the Blue Star. It is 20 pages in length, published, I believe, in 1979 as part of the Thieves' World collection, which was a book that was published and edited, and it was a collaboration of different authors in kind of the sci-fi fantasy genre. And so Zimmer Bradley wrote this story, which introduced the character Lethande, which was a magician. And so it later, back in 2013, over 30 years later, there was a compilation made of all the different Lethande stories, and so I thought that was interesting, and I definitely am going to keep a lookout because I really enjoyed the character. So let's dive right in and give you kind of a summary of what the short story is about. So The Secret of the Blue Star is a short story that is focused around the magician Lethande. And this powerful magician is very secretive. It's part of this Blue Star Order, and they must face their old rival, Raven, who is also of the Blue Star Order and is a fellow magician that has discovered a dangerous secret about Lethande and that could ultimately steal and best her powers. That Raven thinks he has uncovered is that Lethande is a woman and not a man. And so this Blue Star kind of rivalry happens, and you get different nods throughout this storytelling about the chaos, what that entails. I don't really know, but it's touched on, and how the different orders of magicians will band together when the chaos presents itself. And you have different elements that are, kind of revolve around what gives a magician power, and it's their secret, and that secret can be various things, and Raven thinks that Lethande's secret is her gender, and so that's very interesting. And so he goes about kind of an interesting way of trying to uncover that so that he could be the most powerful in the blue order. And so that's kind of the premise of the story. What makes it really good is the writing's impeccable. I really enjoy Zimmer Bradley's writing. This in particular entry, being the second kind of short story I've read from Zimmer Bradley, this one, the writing is purposely done in the sense that she's trying to be very cagey about keeping the gender identity of the main character, Lethande, from the reader. And I thought that was really interesting. I think that the wizards, their secrets, kind of the history, the development of that is done in a way where it draws you in as a reader and keeps you kind of wanting to turn the pages to see what's going on, to learn more about these mysterious wizards and what they're doing and why, and so that's really interesting. The power, the deception is really kind of intoxicating as a short story. I liked how the plot comes to fruition ahead. It's very interesting, and there's an interesting conflict, and it is some interesting kind of sub-characters as well. In terms of excerpts, there is one that was really good. It said, Raven's eyes gleamed with triumph, but Lethande smiled behind her lute. Secrets are weapons, she thought, but I have more than one. And then in terms of rating and overall, I gave this a 4.1 out of 5. It was very enjoyable, a really good short story. Glad I read it. Obviously, like I mentioned before, there is a collection now out there of these stories. So I'm tempted to find that and get my hands on it because I'd like to read more about this. Obviously, I really enjoyed the mysteriousness of the short story about the Order of the Wizards, what gives them power, what doesn't. I wanted to see more from that. I enjoyed some of the vernacular that's used. I thought it was really interesting. And so that is my take on The Secret of the Blue Star by Marion Zimmer Bradley. I gave it a 4.1 out of 5. And so the next short story, I went to this collection that my friend Pat at Book Chat with Pat recommended that I pick up. And so I got this and I picked a short story by an author I've never read before. It is Alice Elliott Dark and her short story In the Gloaming. And I was like, that's interesting. It was from the New Yorker. This is 16 pages in length. It's kind of in the genre, I would say it's fiction. It's very well done. And let's talk about it. So the summary of the short story is it centers around Laird, and he is a young man dying of AIDS. And so immediately I got reminiscent of Funny Boy by John Grisham that I recently read and reviewed in Saturday Shorts and really, really enjoyed. And this one is kind of in the same vein. You have this young man, he's around 30 years old, and he comes back home to his parents' house to die. And when he returns to spend his remaining kind of time with his family, he develops kind of a closer bond to his mother, Janet. And Janet becomes very enamored with setting up her daily schedule around these after supper kind of discussions they have, her and Laird out on the porch and during what she calls In the Gloaming, which is kind of this sunset, quiet, retrospective time of day that I believe came from a term used over the seas. And I don't know if it's Welsh or Irish, but I believe it's touched on and I didn't write it down. But with that being said, it definitely is indicative of this time where they create this kind of bond. And Janet, always seems very interested to get to that part of the day. And she finds herself kind of altering her routines that she's become accustomed to all around making sure that she kind of has this time with him and lets him open up, and she starts learning more and she starts questioning her own self. And it's very, very well done. There's also some interesting family dynamics and relationships that are very relatable in the story. You have a father that's pretty absent because he's obviously dealing with this family dynamic and trauma that's happening in a very different way. He's very absorbed in his work, and so he's not being present. You have a sister that's older, has her own family, is coming around, but just has a hard time dealing with it, is worried about her mother, obviously. And so let's talk about what makes it a really good short story. Well, I really thought the short story is very emotional. The subject content is it's very hard. But at the same time, it's very easy to provoke emotions in you. And I felt like at times, like I was overly emotional about the short story for whatever reason. It just really hit hard with me. I was really taken back when you try an author that you've never read before and the story just connects with you at that kind of emotional level. It really kind of makes you take a pause and step back. And this one really did. I thought the relationships, although relatable, were really, really well done. I thought the dynamic between Laird and his mom, Janet, I thought that the father's dynamic and what ends up happening towards the end with the father was a great contrast to where you think the story is going. Obviously, the story goes in the direction overall that it's going to, but it does so in a very abrupt way that really punches you in the face as a reader in a good way, in an emotional way. And so let's talk about a couple excerpts that I really enjoyed. One is they had stopped pretending. There was a clarity, a quiet between them that had not been there before. And then another one was, in the gloaming, we talked. It was the best time of day, and I loved him the best then. And that is very indicative of Janet's relationship towards the end with Laird. In terms of rating and overall, I give this a 4.8 out of 5. It was a phenomenal short story, incredibly powerful. Like I said, I got pretty emotional reading this because it really just pulled on my heartstrings, especially the father. And I'm not going to spoil that, but the father at the end, that absolutely killed me. Being a father myself, I mean, who wouldn't? I just really thought it was really well. And it spoke really well of how men are viewed in this society when it comes to emotions and dealing with their emotions. Plus, you also have the dynamic of the mid-90s, and you have a person dying of AIDS, so you have that aspect as well. Again, I thought it really played well, similar to John Grisham's Funny Boy in that kind of subject matter. This one was a great one, 4.8 out of 5. Then the third short story I had for this Saturday Shorts, I went back to this omnibus collection of Conan by Robert E. Howard. I went with the short story, The Man-Eaters of Zamboula. It is 30 pages in length. It was first published in 1935 in the November issue of Weird Tales magazine. It also went by the name later of Shadows of Zamboula. This is probably not my favorite Conan tale. I'm just going to forewarn you with that, but I enjoyed it. I mean, it's Conan, and there's not a really bad Conan tale, but definitely there's better ones than this one, but I enjoyed this for what it is, so let's talk about it. Summary of this is Conan arrives in the decadent city of Zamboula. It's a desert, kind of at a desert crossroads, and it's filled with corruption and danger. And when Conan visits, I thought it was really interesting that he knows he's going to go gamble. So what he does is he goes to this inn and pays this gentleman, I think his name was Aram, and he pays him ahead of time for lodging at this inn because he knows he's going gambling and he's probably not going to win. And so he does end up late at night going to the inn, and he has, Aram lets him in, and he has just enough money to get some a tuggard of wine or something like that, and that's it. And so that story, I thought that was really interesting at the very beginning. What really kind of kicks it off is Conan realizes that there is not like beggars and homeless people out in the streets at night. And that was really shocking. He mentions, like, of all the places I've been, I've never seen that before. And so he goes to kind of investigate, like, what's going on? That seems very, very weird. And so what he ends up realizing is that at night, the town is kind of, I wouldn't say overrun, but there are dark-skinned cannibals that come out at night that are interested in meals. And so he ends up attacking one of these, and he comes to find out through his investigation and with a girl that comes to him in need and is out and about at night, that the innkeeper is not who he says he is. And all the while, there is a dark sorcery, a stolen talisman, and different people are portraying to be people that they are not. And so that's kind of the premise of the story. What makes it really good is obviously it's a really good Conan tale in the sense that Conan, again, I think, is very cunning. He definitely has a pretty high IQ that I think is really interesting and is as a contrast to his or his barbarism. I thought that was really interesting. I liked the sorcery element. Again, it wouldn't be a Conan tale if you didn't have kind of some damsel in distress. You have Zabibi, who ends up being not who she says he is, and her lover is not who he says he is, but there's a reason for that. And then you have a sorcerer, Tatrasmet, is this sorcerer and what is going on and how is his relationship with the innkeeper and what's going on. And so I thought it was really interesting. There's definitely Zabibi is flirting with Conan, all in a guise to get him to do her bidding. And I thought that was really interesting as well. Some of the excerpts, I had one that I really enjoyed. It was Conan drew his sword and laughed grimly. Your bones will lie in the gutter with your guts, dog. And I thought it was really interesting. In terms of rating, like I said before, it's not my favorite from Conan. I gave it a 3.8. out of 5. It's not my favorite tale. It's good. Don't get me wrong. It's a good, quick tale. It's Conan, so you can't really go wrong. I enjoyed the story. There's different elements that were really, really fun, but it didn't really have all of that highs that you get in a normal Conan tale. So a 3.8 seems like a reasonable score. And so bonus. So I have been, obviously perusing my Kindle, using my Kindle a little more, and I came across a magazine. And so Tim at Secret Fire Books had put out that, hey, out on Kindle is this new Necromancer Volume 3 that he put out there. And so I started doing some digging. I was looking under Tim's Amazon presence, and I noticed that there was a Silo story. I keep wanting to call him Shiloh. A Silo story that he published in a magazine back in 2023, and the magazine was Silence and Star Song, and Tim published a short story in there called Emerald Tears, and it is a sword and sorcery tale. It is in the fall 2023 issue of this magazine, Volume 1, Issue 2. And so I downloaded it on my Kindle and wanted to check it out because I am a fanboy of Silos. And so, if I can get his name right. And so I was like all for this. And then I also went through kind of Tim's catalog and I picked out a couple other things that I'm going to be downloading as well. But the summary of Emerald Tears by our friend T.H. Brandt, aka Tim at Secret Fire Books, is Silo of Uz ventures out from the shining city of his people, determined that neither man or beast nor treacherous waste of the Red Desert will keep him from his destination. When he arrives, he may find that his blade and brute strength by themselves may not overcome his adversaries. And that is a direct quote from the beginning, kind of the prologue of this short story by Tim. I thought it was very fitting. And so what makes this a really good short story? Well, first and foremost, Tim's writing is really good. And I'm not just saying that because he's a YouTube buddy. His writing's good. It is very Robert E. Howard-esque. You can tell when you're reading Tim's work, and this is my third tale of Silo, because I read Golden Rice and Silver Wings, which have Silo in it, and from his 5 short stories, Sand and Steel, which I highly, highly recommend. So this is my third tale. His writing of Silo is phenomenal. Really, really, really good. And so what I really liked about Silo is he's both brutal, he has a more high moral code, he's fierce, he's respected, he's sought after, he's very cunning. He reminds me a lot of Conan, like, let's be honest. And Tim's writing reminds me a lot of Robert E. Howard's. You can tell when Tim writes that he has had a long history of reading old school sword and sorcery and sci-fi. It just, his word choice, his sentence structure, it all speaks from kind of that time period. And so it reads very well. It's like putting on an old sock that fits really well. I don't know how else to describe it, as cheesy as that might sound, but it just really works for me. Silo is obviously a character that I think is one of the best in fantasy right now. I'm going to say it. I've read quite a bit of fantasy. I really like Silo. I really do. I think it's a great premise. I think he's got a lot of staying power. There's a lot of different directions Tim can go with it. I think it's great. In this particular tale, he helps Drugo and Mazia, a father and daughter on hard times. He helps them. There's mercenaries that come. Silo gets into a fight. So you got fighting. Then he comes upon this mystique kind of a place where there's this emerald, and lo and behold, he's collecting these things because they have power, and he's trying to capture this power, and there's 6 remaining ones, and you get that at the end of this short story. I thought it was really interesting. You definitely need to check this out. In terms of excerpts, there's one I want to tell you, as I'm starting to get long-winded, is that that scar should have taught you better than to cross swords with a proud son of Uz. Clearly, you did not learn your lesson. And I thought it was a really good one. In terms of rating this short story, I give it a 4.5 out of 5. It was great. It was super solid. I really enjoyed it. I read it last night, ripped through it. It's great storytelling. It impresses me. Again, Tim has really, really got something good here. I think his writing's fantastic. You definitely need to check out Tim. If you haven't, go on to Amazon, find out, I highly recommend this. I've read it. I think you would enjoy it. I definitely think you should check out some of these short stories and that Tim has published out there. I definitely think you should check out some of his other works. He's underrated in my opinion. And so that, my friends, is my take on Saturday Shorts. I had 4 great ones. It was another great Saturday. I'm sorry this is a longer video, but I hope you enjoy this, and I will talk to you all in the next one. Thanks.